Thank you, Bob, for that lovely introduction. Thank you also to Rabbi Stiffman for filling in for Rabbi Fassman at the last minute, and for Rabbi Fassman, who had intended to be here. I felt so supported by all of you and the board, the search committee, and our other key stakeholders. Indeed, I felt so supported, and the tributes have been so great that I have half a mind to retire right now while I'm at the top of my game. Thank you all for coming here this evening to celebrate what Federation is and what it will continue to be. I have the profound honor to stand before you tonight to give you a sense of my vision for this community. It's a truly humbling moment, not merely for the confidence that you have placed in me, but for the significance of the work that Federation has long done in St. Louis and around the world. This is particularly true in the last 2 decades under the leadership of Barry Rosenberg, building, securing, and cultivating our community so that we and many others may live fundamentally decent lives, lives which express our core values of justice, humanity, and decency, and in which Judaism in all of its expressions is embraced as central to a life well lived. So let me take just a moment to personally thank Barry for his role in my own transition over the last few weeks and going forward. There's simply few Jewish professionals in the world today who have his longevity, achieved his success, and been so fundamentally dedicated to the cause. St. Louis is lucky to have had him, to have had you, your vision, and the stability that you have brought us. We are also grateful he is not going anywhere. I welcome him officially to continue his service as my senior advisor, and this time I won't say what I like to call you in public as you've asked, and I can tell you I look forward to continue to learning deeply from your example. Now, along with the vision for my community, I've been asked to give you a sense from about who I am, but frankly, after Ellen Futterman's extensive profile of me and my family in this year's Guide to Jewish Life, I can't imagine there's anything left to say or that you'd really want to hear. I do, however, want to acknowledge the support I've received by my family, from Miggy Greenberg and kids Hoban and Emma Greenberg Rehfeld, particularly in the last few months that we've been contemplating this move. We're all still adjusting to my new role, and I'm blessed by the love and support from them at this critical time. I also want to acknowledge my broader family who are joining us today, for they have made me who I am. And Bob spoke of them in a minute, but I want to reiterate it. My mother, Beverly, who many of you know since she moved here 5 years ago from Philadelphia, and fostered in me a love of Judaism, its tropes, its values, particularly that of welcoming the stranger. My father, Rex, is here from Baltimore, and as Bob mentioned, he and my stepmother, Ruth, who was herself a Federation professional and who passed away 10 years ago, showed me what service to others really meant. Joining my dad is also Ellen O'Brien, my second stepmom. Some people are only fortunate to have one. I have two. Ellen continues our traditions with her own engagement in philanthropy and service to her own church community. And finally, my older brother Ed from D.C., whose commitment to social justice continues to foster lively debate from all sides around the dinner table. He and I continue to hope for that day sometime in the future when the $6 million man will truly become a reality. That's a generational joke, I guess. Steve Austin, a man barely alive. In all seriousness, I am who I am because of the legacies that all of you have given me, and I'm profoundly appreciative of that. So let me then turn to my vision for the community, and I want to begin here with a story. The date is December 2006, and I've been invited by the Shalem Center in Jerusalem to give a paper on the use of the Hebrew Bible in Western political thought. I took my then 12-year-old daughter, Emma, with me to show her the places that had been important to me when I lived there for a year. The fields in which I picked bananas while learning Hebrew on a kibbutz just south of Haifa, to exploring the ancient walls of Jerusalem and everything in between. Now, I knew that Emma would have little interest in a conference on the use of the Hebrew Bible in Western political thought. I'm a really perceptive dad. So I hired a 16-year-old Israeli to spend those 3 days showing Emma Jerusalem from a team perspective. You know where this is going, right? They saw a lot of the city, and let's just say that the Israel Museum and the Chagall windows were not on their itinerary. Quelle surprise, right? Well, after the conference, we spent a day walking the city, and I was then able to experience the tapestry of Israel through the eyes of my daughter. It's a tapestry that often gets lost in the news of political conflict, a thriving, vibrant nation making all manners of contribution to science, technology, industry, and ideas. A country that remains vital to the very idea of modern Jewish life and our people. Well, that last day in Jerusalem was getting long and we were getting hungry. So Emma turned to me and said, "Dad, let's go to a place that I went a few days ago with Techelet," the woman that I had hired. So I agreed. But then Emma paused, for she realized at that point she had forgotten the name of the restaurant. She did, however, remember exactly what the restaurant looked like and what kind of food she had eaten. Emma beamed as she turned to me and she said, "Dad, I ate falafel in a brownstone building." Have you ever been to Jerusalem? Lots of falafel, lots of brownstone buildings. Now, in that short moment, Emma was expressing a profound centeredness about who she was, where she was going, and where she wanted to be. Sure, it was just falafel in Jerusalem, and of course Emma knew that there were many places to get it, and noticed the Jerusalem stone all around her. But she had the confidence to move forward, despite her no real sense of where she happened to be at that time. I'll come back to that story in a few minutes, but that profound groundedness is a good way for us to begin to reflect for ourselves as a community in transition who we are, where we're going, and where we want to be. Fortunately, the answer to some of these questions, particularly the second, is rather easy, thanks not only to the stability of Barry's 2 decades of leadership, but also because of the 6 strategic priorities that Federation has recently articulated. Now, I found it helpful to organize these in terms of 3 main areas of emphasis: building Jewish lives, securing our people's basic needs, and cultivating the human and physical capital, human and physical resources we need to do both. Building, securing, and cultivating. I'll take each one in turn. First, building. Federation seeks to build and enhance the Jewish identity of community of young Jews and young Jewish families. These priorities recognize that engagement wanes between the latter teen years and the time that one's own children become old enough for school. It's a period that can easily stretch 10 or 20 years. Though Jewish identity is never suddenly made or lost, there are moments in life that can lead a person towards or away from their own heritage, towards or away from the touchstones of family that shaped who they are and who they are yet to become. These 10 or 20 years are filled with such moments of dislocation, of discontinuity, as children become more independent, go to college, form their professional and intimate bonds, and begin to settle down as families. It's precisely then that our familiar tropes of one's own Jewish identity are simultaneously broken and reformed on one's own terms. Our commitment to this period of time in no way minimizes our long-standing commitment to Jewish identity and community for all of us, but we emphasize this period because of its centrality to the future of our people, our culture, and the very values we hold dear. Now, Federation supports initiatives that help shape a person's identity at this time and build community through educational, social, and professional programs so that they may envision their own place in the story of our people. Even if it's merely to provide a safe place of belonging, where they can feel at home away from home. That's what the community provided for me as an alienated adolescent in high school youth group, or for others like Michael Steinberg, who found a home on the basketball courts of his own JCC, and whose enduring support of our community helps all of us to thrive. And we support these projects because we understand the value of Judaism and engagement in all of its modes to a white life well lived. Now, our second emphasis is security, and presses on our historic mission to secure those most in need against the ravages and indignities of poverty, infirmity, and anti-Semitism. And here we pay close attention to the needs of those nearby, but understand that we are not isolated and make lasting commitments to our people wherever they are in need of help. We work through our partnerships with the Joint Distribution Committee, the Jewish Agency for Israel, and in collaboration with Federation in Atlanta through our sister city of Yokneam Megiddo. Our emphasis on security also means countering the harms that each of us individually and our community collectively faces regularly, merely for being Jews. Now, our concern for security may seem out of date to some, who note that the Jewish people here and throughout the world are in aggregate stronger than they have ever been. And indeed, by any empirical measure, that's exactly right. We are stronger and more influential than we have ever been in our long history. but we must not let the very strength of the Jewish people today blind us to the continuing material needs of Jews here in St. Louis and around the world. Needs to be fed, clothed, and sheltered. That needs to be given access to mental and physical health care. That needs to promote a person's fundamental dignity through the ravages of old age. And we must support our agencies that do this with a keen sensitivity to our own Jewish mission. When appropriate, we must enable them to provide these services in a manner that allows their recipients to meet the obligations they have to their Jewish ritual and practice, that meets vote for the observant, that is central to the very meaning of many of our own people's lives. As for anti-Semitism, well, our strength should also not blind us to the very threats each of us will continue to face simply for being Jews. It's not that the whole world is out to get us. It doesn't presume that mindset. Rather, the danger of anti-Semitism is simply that it operates as a potent heuristic, a simplifying frame for how other people understand the world, a terrible story on which they draw in times of crisis to mobilize hate. And this is true whether at the personal level, as tragically we've seen in the last few weeks, or at the level of international discourse that sometimes involves Israel. Our emphasis on security at a time of historic strength forces us then to ask, how should we use that strength responsibly to recognize our continued needs and secure our people in a manner that fulfills our commitments at tzedek, chesed, and gimilut chasadim, justice, mercy, and acts of loving kindness to all who would be helped by our exercise of power or harmed by our failure to act. Finally, our strategic priorities emphasize the cultivation of human and physical capital our community needs to build and secure itself for the future. The cultivation of human capital comes in the form of professional and volunteer development in which all our organizations regularly engage, the organizations of our community. And Federation here has contributed profoundly through J-Pro St. Louis, or our Millstone Institute, named for the paterfamilias of our community, i.e. Millstone. Championed by Mont Levy, supported by the Lubin Green Foundation, the Millstone Foundation, and since joined by the generous support of Bill Solomon. Its professional leadership team of Marcy Mayer-Eisen and Karen Scher are doing nationally recognized work cultivating professional and lay leadership in our community. And as part of my onboarding process, that's what they called it, onboarding. I don't know some of these terms coming from academia, but I called it orientation, but the National Jewish Federation calls it onboarding. It felt a little bit like, you've seen the movie The Matrix. Maybe some of you. Another cultural reference. You should all go see that and watch The $6 Million Man. There's a scene in The Matrix where Neo has to learn how to fly a helicopter, and so he calls it in. He's living in a computer world. He calls it in and he says, upload me. And so in a matter like that, he knows how to drive a military helicopter. The uploading process was a little bit like that for me this summer, and a couple times when I went out to learn about Federation nationally. But one thing that consistently pointed to, not only the strength of our Federation and the leadership of Barry, but also the J-Pro St. Louis and the Millstone Institute, the work that we are doing here in St. Louis to cultivate professional and lay leadership. It's extraordinary, and we owe them the acknowledgement of that. So we cultivate our physical resources by ensuring that we have the infrastructure we need to build and secure our community, to provide support for the JCC even in a time of crisis, or in our continuing commitment to senior services through support of the Covenant High Development, our naturally occurring retirement communities, or by serving as a catalyst for religious and educational institutions, like the Federation did in the successful merger that created the Saul Mirowitz Jewish Community Day School. These three emphases of building, securing, and cultivating depend, of course, on the continued commitment of our own community's financial resources. And here I join the thanks you've heard already from Barry and from Bob, to those of you in this room and many others unable to be here who have contributed to our success. There's a teaching from our tradition, Im ein kemach, ein Torah, ein kemach, which means without flour, there's no Torah, without Torah, there's no flour. But we could translate it, if you don't have the resources, you can't achieve the vision. But if you don't have the vision, your resources are meaningless. I thank you for your continued support from the smallest donor to the largest, for keeping us building, securing, and cultivating the needs and resources of our Jewish community. So that's where we're going. And the next question is, where do we want to be? And by this I mean to ask, how do we best think about achieving these aims? And I think the answer is towards a vision of a unified Jewish community, as well as a more systematic effort to partner with the St. Louis region for the benefit of us all. I'll speak briefly to each of these before concluding. One of our strengths in this community lies in the multiple points of access we have to rich Jewish lives here in St. Louis. We also, though, have to recognize that this diversity can weaken us because it keeps us focused on the places to which we find access and meaning in our own lives. It keeps us focused on places, whether that's our congregations, led by an extraordinary team of Clay Kodesh, of rabbis and cantors, or through any of the multiple agencies that actually do the work of our community that Federation merely supports, identifies, and enables. Now, in earlier generations, this challenge to bring us together was easier, but for unfortunate reasons. When I was a child, a campaign to free Soviet Jewry brought us out from our silos to work with one another for the collective good of all. And in an earlier period, engaging around Israel felt necessary and could bring us together with some dispassion because we recognized its very struggle to survive. We have to be honest that today Israel is viewed with greater ambiguity and ambivalence. Whatever you think of that, that is how it's viewed, particularly of people my age and younger. And that the dispassion of necessity that once characterized our discourse has been replaced by the extremism of complacency. A complacency that has driven so many of my generation and younger from the conversation at all. Ironically, it's the success of the Jewish people to respond to those crises and the success of Israel as a thriving modern political nation that threatens the very unity of us all. Now, I don't have a quick answer of how to fix this, but Federation is uniquely positioned to take a view of the whole, a point that was made very early to me by Rabbi Chaim Schafter, and I appreciated his framing of it. There is simply no other organization here in St. Louis, or perhaps in any community, that can take a broad view to identify, convene our community, and meet our needs as a whole, to help structure sane dialogue about Israel or other matters of concern, as I know our JCRC has done over the years, or through innovative projects like our upcoming Thrive Live that stands to literally bring us all together in one place to celebrate community, identity, and of course, hip-hop. You will find publicity for Thrive Alive on the seats in front of you. Not in front of you, sorry, do not go to the seats in front of you. That would be very inappropriate. Under you, or wherever you put the material. I hope you look at it, and I hope you join us in April. Second, I think we must recognize that the future of the St. Louis Jewish community is tied inextricably to the future of our region more generally. And here we should join together with current efforts towards civic progress, transforming St. Louis into a more culturally and economically vibrant region. And I say this because for almost 20 years, we've been telling ourselves that we're a community of 60,000 people. You've heard it since you were young or middle-aged, and now you're old or middle-aged. And it's as if there's been no population shifts, no growth, no decay since the survey was done in the mid-90s. I say that with some jest, but the fact is the trends we see all around us are the ones that our region is facing. Our young people look to move elsewhere, to spend their early independent years that I spoke of before, and as often as not, stay there and do not return. Building a strong economic and cultural region that attracts young professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, teachers, engineers, is not merely good for the region, it's desperately needed by us for the growth and the sustaining, the sustenance and the growth of our own community. We need to make this region a place that young professionals want to come as the first stop on their journey of their lives, and partner with the cultural institutions and civic institutions to achieve that goal. Well, let me move to next steps. I was asked to articulate my vision for the community and think of ways that Federation can best move us towards it. The truth is that Federation is not mine any more than community is Federation's. Indeed, it's exactly the other way, at least in my view. Federation is not me, it's our board of directors and trustees, our lay leadership that do its hard work. Federation's not me, it's those dedicated staff in the building across the street who have devoted their careers to building, securing, and cultivating Jewish life in St. Louis. And perhaps most important, federation is not the community. Federation is here to support and nurture our community, its synagogues, agencies, and organizations. Indeed, I invite our community widely to join our efforts on behalf of us all, whether as donors, small or large, or as volunteers, in any number of ways. Now, you remember that trip that Emma and I went on in Jerusalem in 2006? Well, I was giving a paper there related to the idea that community is not the same as government. It's an idea that went back to John Locke, a 17th century English political philosopher, whose words themselves were the inspiration for Jefferson's Declaration of Independence and provide the foundation by which we take it that people have a right to rebel as a community, as individuals, but, well, in Locke's view, as a community, against their government. I don't think that federation is the government of the community. I mean, for one thing, could anybody govern our community? But still, there is a one way that the analogy of federation to government is apt. We must never mistake the good of federation for the community that we serve, any more than we would mistake the good of any particular government or policy of any nation for the lasting and abiding commitment to its people, its welfare, and its long-term sustainability. Federation is and must remain in service to our collective welfare, to our agencies, and not the other way around. And this, then, is my vision: to build, secure, and cultivate through the unification of our community and partnership with our region more generally. What's next? Well, it's time for me to be quiet and listen. In all honesty, I've been invited to give a number of talks, and I'd be happy to come into your organization, a congregation, the ones that we're all a part of, our own silos, if you will, our own points of access, to talk about the work that we do here in Federation. And I'll tell you what would be even better than that. Invite me to talk, but invite me in to listen to you, to your groups, to come hear your vision of who we are, where we're going, and where we ought to be, your ideas of how Federation is working or failing to work for your organization and our community. I can share that with our board of directors, with all of you, and trustees, the one who ultimately set our priorities and our direction. But I do believe that we have to listen to those we serve, and that's the best way to begin a productive partnership. Now, I don't want to sound so Pollyannish about things. I'm pretty optimistic, generally, but I'm a song leader, and I'm not about to break us into kumbaya. The truth is we will have to make hard choices going forward, and that means at times there will be disagreement and discord about the decisions we make. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but I do vow to be as transparent as possible. I used to tell my students, I don't care what you believe. And I meant it. What I cared about was the reasons they had for what they believe. And similarly, I care not only that you know, that the community knows, what it is Federation decides. I care very much that everyone is clear on why we made the decisions that we did. So until a week ago, I had been a full-time professor at WashU, to follow up the theme of the students. The 11 years I spent there were formative in the best ways possible. I'm indebted to my colleagues and students, and in particular the leadership of its chancellor, Mark Wrighton, to create a caring community dedicated to the pursuit of truth and the development of character. I'm not leaving WashU because I dislike teaching, research, or the life of the mind. Rather, I'm taking this job because my commitment to its mission, to our mission, the potential it has to shape conversations about human rights, justice, and decency, and to build dynamic, healthy Jewish communities that define what it means to live meaningful lives. If we are a people of the book, well, I turn now from writing a book to enable others to do the writing themselves. So let's return again to Jerusalem with my daughter trying to find falafel in a building made of brown stone. She did remember one other detail. There was a large blue tarp hanging on the building next to the restaurant. That turns out to be somewhat important. That fact gave her a kick in the pants she needed to press on, despite her own honest assessment of where she was. And so she did, moving us from the old city to the new. Over here, Dad, now I think we go left. We spent a few hours searching, and she never gave up hope. She just kept plodding on, figuring it out. Then we turned a corner, and down a narrow street, there's a falafel sign on a building made of brown stone, right next to another with a blue tarp hanging from it. How she found it, I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. Emma knew who she was, where she was going, and where she wanted to be. And I hope that continues for her as it has till now, for my son Hoban as well for the rest of their days. For us, I can hope that we proceed with that kind of certainty, with the kind of honest certainty about our future that both of them exhibit in their own lives. I'm profoundly honored and extremely humbled, extraordinarily humbled by the confidence and the faith that the search committee, the board, and now the community has placed in me. If I fail, it will not be for the want of your support. And if I succeed, it will be on the backs and the foundations of all of you, because of what you have given me and holding me up, and so many more not able to come here today. I look forward to the coming year as I learn more from you about who we are, where we're going, and to chart a course together towards where we want to be. On behalf of the dedicated staff of the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, who are in service to all our needs and whose professional commitment long precedes my own, I wish you Shana Tova Tikatevu. May it be a good year, a healthy year, and a year in which we truly do thrive together. Thank you very much.